Good evening. Good evening. On behalf of the Newark Public Library, welcome. I'm Tom Ankner, the supervising librarian in charge of the New Jersey group. Please help yourself to some food if you haven't already. It's on the tables over there. Bathrooms are off the gallery out here on the left. We are excited to be hosting this film screening and talk by Wheeler and Antabanaz, linked to his book, Walking the Old Boonton Line, a photographic journey on the abandoned rails of New Jersey. I just want to take a few moments to introduce Wheeler, then I will let him take over. Wheeler and Antabanaz grew up in West Caldwell. As a child, he became fascinated with the nearby Essex Mountain Sanatorium, which had been abandoned years earlier. He created a website dedicated to the decaying buildings called welcometohell.net, which evolved into an online journal of his thoughts. These writings eventually became his first book, Gas Station Thoughts in the Daily Journal of Wheeler and Antabanaz. Wheeler's 2-year exploration of the Passaic River and its surroundings became the basis for a special edition of the Erie, New Jersey magazine in 2008 called Nightshade on the Passaic. Everyone here tonight get a free copy of this issue. It's on the table over there. In 2021, he published Walking the Newark Bridge, a photographic journey on the abandoned rails of New Jersey. The book he will be signing tonight was published the following year. And he's also selling copies of his book, Walking the Old Boonton Line, for $40. Available, can be paid for in cash or on Venmo. And the books are over here. And the tables will be signing them. So please join me in welcoming urban explorer, writer, filmmaker, and entertainer, Wheeler Antabanaz.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you to the Newark Public Library for having us here tonight. And I think this is going to be pretty awesome. This is sort of like the grand finale to my book tour that I've been doing. I've been hitting up libraries and different private shows and stuff, trying to just tell people about my adventures on the abandoned rails, walking from Montclair to Jersey City. So I did that in 2022, last year, and I knew they were going to make it into this Greenway or whatever, so I said, you know what, let me just take as many pictures and as much video as I possibly can before they rip up these tracks and turn it into a paved highway for bicycles. So I took one last walk along the old Boonton line, and that is what we're going to do tonight. All I ask is that you just save any questions you may have for afterwards. We're going to do a Q&A directly afterwards, and if you could turn your cell phones off, that would be appreciated as well. So, Tom, if you want to get the lights, I think we are pretty much ready to roll. This is a 30-minute film, and I'm going to live narrate it for you guys. So I got to keep up with this thing. I'm going to try to do my best. All right, you ready? Yeah! All right, let's do it. And this is Walking the Old Boonton Line by Wheeler Antabanaz. And I am Wheeler Antabanaz. And here we go. To the right is the very live tracks, as you can see, of New Jersey Transit. To the left is Pine Street. It's the abandoned rails leading into the old Boonton Line. So we're going to start here. When I moved here in 2007, and when I moved to Montclair, I started coming down here all the time because I lived on Lackawanna Plaza and I needed a place to go walk. So as soon as I saw the graffiti down here under Bay Street, I was like, oh yeah, this is my spot right here. So I started coming down here all the time. I would go for these really long introspective walks along the old Boonton line. And I actually, at that time, didn't even know that it was called the old Boonton line at all. That was news to me. To me, it was just the abandoned tracks by my house. Underneath Baldwin Street right here, there was this really interesting marker sticking up out of the ground. It had a W on it, which was different than the other markers that we were going to come across along the way. I did a little bit of research and I found that this was actually a whistle post to remind the conductor to blow the whistle on the way into Montclair. So here we go, headed into Glen Ridge, and we're headed towards the Benson Street station. This is Ridgewood Avenue right here. It's a little bit of a rickety kind of bridge. And there's the first mile marker, we're going to see JC 11. So right here, we're 11 miles from Jersey City. And that's in Glen Ridge at the Benson Street station. when I was a kid, this station was like all messed up. It was all like burnt out and abandoned and everything. But somebody has come along and fixed it up really nice. So I don't know if somebody lives here or, you know, whatever, but if they do, they're going to have to get used to people walking by their house every day on this greenway that's about to happen. So here we go, we're flying backwards here into Bloomfield, and pretty soon we're going to turn around and go forward into Bloomfield. And this is Broad Street in Bloomfield. Here's the train bridge over Broad Street. And as you can see, it's a very tall bridge, it's a very sturdy bridge. When they do the greenway here, it's not going to be a problem because, you know, it's just very high. They don't really have to do anything to it. That's not the case with the other bridges along the way, unfortunately. So we're going to see what happens with that. I used to just come here from Montclair and basically just, you know, hang out on that bridge and watch Broad Street go. I always loved Bloomfield. These are the low bridges coming up. As I'm walking towards them, I see this little baggie here, and of course I can't help but bend down and just kind of see if there's anything in it, you know? Old habits die hard, whatever. As you can see, these are very low bridges. That one's 11.8 over Spruce Street. This one's Belleville Avenue, 11.8. This is New Street, it's 11.6. So very low bridges here that we're dealing with. And as you can see, as I'm walking over this one, I'm kind of like teetering over the traffic. Obviously, they're going to have to fix these bridges before they have pedestrians, you know, like traveling over them. So my question is, okay, if we have to fix these bridges anyway, are we going to raise them while we have the chance? As you can see from this bridge right here, it's been hit many, many times by buses. In fact, there was a fatality here even. Like, look at this, whoosh. Like, look how low that bridge is. So as I'm walking, I'm thinking, man, I think we should probably raise these things. So that's just kind of food for thought as we're going into this whole Greenway project, you know. This is JFK Drive, and this is the bridge over JFK Drive. Now, this bridge goes back so far that it used to be over the Morris Canal. That's how old this bridge is. The Morris Canal followed where JFK Drive is today. So it's kind of a sketchy bridge unless you stay on the grading. If you stay on the grading, it's not that bad, but I would not recommend walking out onto the ties because they're wooden and you just, they may be rotten and you may end up in the roadway below, you know? But a pretty cool bridge. And I used to, you know, kind of come to this spot all the time. This was about as far as I would usually get to this bridge. The next one coming up is the Garden State Parkway Bridge. And so from Montclair, this was a pretty good walk on the abandoned tracks. This was like my usual walk. And I would just stand here on the bridge and I would watch the cars go. I mean, this highway here, the Garden State Parkway, it just never stops. It never ceases. You could be here on Christmas Eve at midnight and it would still be going. Actually, the only time it ever does stop moving is every day at rush hour when it comes to a complete stop. And it's like a parking lot out there. But other than that, it's always packed with cars and they're always moving. It's kind of like a stream or a vascular system or something. I don't know, it's pretty cool to just like watch the flow here. And of course, I've driven it many times as well. So it's just interesting to get this perspective. The other thing up here was there's a lot of old infrastructure to do with the train lines. And this next shot right here, this is like some of the old telegraph equipment. Basically, the old communication systems followed the train tracks out into the country. You know, like this is basically considered the country back in the day. All the rubber insulators are for the telegraph, and the ones on top that are glass are for the phones. I just kind of picked up that information along the way. This is the Williamson Avenue Bridge in Bloomfield. Kind of a cool bridge because there's a little bit of a graffiti war going on under here. And I've actually been coming here for years just watching the changes in the graffiti. And as you can see, there's some really interesting creative stuff. But it's always changing because people are constantly covering each other up all the time in this spot. And you know, here I am just out in the winter, 2022, getting some fresh air, trying to do a little bit of social distancing, you know, because COVID was going on at this time. So the train tracks were just a really great way to get outside and not see a lot of people and not run into a lot of people. And just to see what's out there. And this is what's out there, the Rose Street Station in Bloomfield. This is what we're looking at right now. This is an old train station that used to be here and is no longer there. It was 10 miles to Jersey City, as you can see by this mile marker, which actually is still there. There's a couple things that are still in place, like this fence over to the right. Some of these signals are kind of there, they're like sitting on the ground right now, but these tracks have all been torn up, and a lot of the history is now permanently gone forever. This is a good shortcut in Bloomfield, even though it says no trespassing. People walk their dogs here like all the time. Those sneakers are still there, thank God. That's one thing that'll never change along the tracks, sneakers. Even when the tracks are gone, they're still going to be there. So this is just a kind of like a cool spot, but the next spot coming up in Belleville was a little bit sad to walk through because it's not only a greenway in this section, but it's actually the habitat for an entire herd of deer. And they have nowhere to go at all except to live on these abandoned tracks. They're very squeezed in, they have nowhere to go. So what I'm worried about is when the development comes, when they pave this rail line, where are these deer going to go? There's bicycles whizzing by constantly. They're going to go out to the streets. And as you can see, Belleville is very densely packed. This is Franklin Avenue. There's not a lot of room for deer here, okay? So there's nowhere for them to go. This bridge over Franklin Avenue was a really great bridge for them, and it served as a greenway. They could cross here safely. Now when there's bicycles going across, they're going to have no way. They're going to be in the road. JC9, we're 9 miles from Jersey City. This is by Nanina's in the park, and this is also by the golf course, which is now taken over the right-of-way. Now these train tracks are gone, but the fence is still here, and what this fence does is it effectively cuts a herd of deer in two. So there's half a herd on one side and half a herd on the other side of the fence. And they can't access this bridge here because they're cut off. So it's a really bad situation, especially because these woods here have recently been leveled. So the herd of deer that lives here has nowhere to go. Now this bridge is amazing, as you can see. It looks like a castle. When you're up there, it's like being on the ramparts of a graffiti-covered castle. It's absolutely beautiful. And you can really just picture trains, it's like steam trains going over this. It's pretty cool. I came back here many, many times to hang out in this area, not just for this one wall. And here's this giant building. Not exactly sure what they do, but it's become a graffiti chill spot in the back. And it's also, this was like basically a place where the animals could live. There was red fox living here, a whole herd of deer, you know, there was like feral cats and stuff. And now it's been completely leveled. I was just here the other day. The spray paint's still there, which is good, but you know, all the trees are gone. So as far as this herd of deer, I don't even know if they're going to be able to exist. This wall of graffiti is ever changing, and it's just a really cool spot. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on. This guy right here is the patriarch of that herd that I was talking about, and you know, he's just going to be pushed out into North Newark, which is where we're headed now along the line. To our left, we see the Tiffany & Company factory, which is a very beautiful landmark in Newark. And it's also like an awesome, awesome example of how you can take a building and make it into really beautiful residential apartments after it's, you know, gone through its industrial use. They really did a good job here. And you can see that, you know, all these dormers have been built on top of this building to accommodate the third floor, which is genius. And they got to keep this very beautiful turret, which is an incredible landmark in North Newark. Everybody knows about this place. Very famous spot. A lot of people, when I told them I was going down this way, told me it was a bad neighborhood and I should watch out. To tell you the truth, I really didn't think about it too much until I saw this stolen car go by. And it was just like smoking out the tires, smoking out the engine. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess this neighborhood's a little popping off a bit, you know, especially during the pandemic. So from the Tiffany & Company factory all the way down to Broadway in Newark, the tracks have been covered up and taken over by industry, and that's what we're seeing here. So I couldn't really walk on the line in this section because of that. So what I did is I popped over to Verona Avenue, and I walked parallel with the tracks all the way down to Broadway to check it out. People told me, again, that Verona Avenue was a pretty bad neighborhood. I did have a little bit of an altercation with some people down here. It wasn't really that big of a deal. But yeah, and you gotta watch your back in this neighborhood a little bit. I went up onto this elevated rail up here, and it was like dogs barking at me, people in these houses and stuff. I was just like, you know what, let me just go back on the street. And so I went down Verona Avenue again, and this section is a little bit bombed out too. Like, as you can see, this building is now gone, but it was looking pretty bad over there for a while, especially in the pandemic. So what I did is I followed it down to MacArthur Highway and hopped back up on the rail so I could cross over Route 21 and the Passaic River, which is what we're seeing right now. The beautiful, beautiful Passaic River. Ooh, I love the Passaic River. So what I did, I went right at that embankment, just kind of scurried up, and I hooked up with the rails again. And luckily I didn't have to walk over this bridge. I've walked over it a couple times before, but it is like very sketchy. You don't really want to walk over that one. So I hooked back up with the rails, and then I headed over Route 21, and then I headed over the Passaic River on the WR draw. They also call it the Cut Bridge. They call it that because people use it to cut from Kearney into Newark, or vice versa. They also call it that because it emerges from the Kearney Cut, which we will get to in just a minute. I love this bridge because I stared at it for 2 years while I had my boat in the water at Rapp's Boatyard, and that's a book and movie that I'm working on now called Wheeler on the Passaic. I wrote it there at the boatyard. And a lot of Sopranos fans will recognize this bridge because Tony drives under it every single episode in the beginning of The Sopranos, so it's really cool. That's the Kearney Cut right there. And this is a dynamited section of Kearney. They just dynamited out the living rock so they can have a level train bed from the Meadowlands to WR Draw. So, because trains don't like hills. One of the cool things about it is that you can see where all the underground streams were back in the day, like before they dynamited this out. In the wintertime, it turns into icicles on both sides. There's a lot of history in this Kearney Cut. And actually right here is the bridge under Kearney Avenue. This is a really cool spot that I explore a little bit more in my book and my movie. I didn't really have time for this presentation, but it's a very cool spot. This is Chestnut Street, and it's kind of a rickety bridge, even though it's much newer than the other bridges in this area. And as the drone kind of climbs, we're going to look out onto the Arlington Station and the Meadowlands beyond. From here, it is 7 miles to Jersey City, 7 miles. So we're getting close, getting close. Here at the Arlington Station in Kearney, there's some infrastructure left, like this bullhorn's still there. I think that mask is still lying on the ground. You know, this box, I think this box may still be here, but definitely this signal's gone, the rails are gone. A lot of the history has been ripped out. I would have loved to have that signal from my backyard. Another thing that was gone is this motorcycle. It was on the side of the tracks for many, many years. I used to kind of just sit on this bike and go vroom, 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 you know, just to pretend I was driving it. And then I'd continue on my way, walk out into Kearney Marsh. And this is one of my favorite spots along these rails, the marsh out in Kearney. Oh my God, it's absolutely amazing, the Meadowlands. This is the last mile marker we're going to see, 6 miles to Jersey City from here. And this is the Route 7 bridge going over the rails, the Belleville Turnpike. Underneath, it's all washed out from the tides. And again, these signals here that have been here since the 1800s are now gone to the scrapyard when Norfolk Southern took up all the rails. So a lot of history has just been taken out of here, you know. I included this shot right here because it's kind of what you see from the side of the rails, and it is just this landfill and the electrical grid, but it's just so beautiful, you know. Like, I don't know how the Meadowlands does it, but it's just so gorgeous. It retains its integrity no matter what we do to it. It's incredible. And as you can see, look how beautiful it is out here. This rail line, or this greenway that they're going to make here, is going to be absolutely amazing going out to Snake Hill like this. But I'll tell you right now, I've been walking out here for decades, and nothing needs to be done to make it perfect. It already is perfect. You know, it's already a beautiful greenway out there. So no money needs to be spent. So here we go, out into the marsh. There's Snake Hill. Here's the nexus of 2 of my books. The North Branch and the old Boonton line coming together. It's kind of like the power spot for me. You know, I love to come out here and just like soak it all in. To the left is the stumps of the Atlantic white cedar. This is a forest of Atlantic white cedar, completely decimated by human beings. We took every single tree because this wood doesn't rot. These stumps have been here since the 1600s without rotting. It's the shame that we see every single low tide. We have to look at this. And now the people on the Greenway can see what humans have done out here in the Meadowlands. We've utterly destroyed it, is what we've done. Here's Snake Hill. Here's the DB draw over the Hackensack River. Everyone's wondering, how are they going to get this greenway across the Hackensack River if this bridge doesn't turn anymore? This bridge hasn't turned in 20 years, and they don't want to make it turn again because they're rebuilding the Portal Bridge just down the river. So that's a big question. I do not have the answer. I have no idea. I'm sure they will have an answer to that, but whatever the answer, it's going to cost a lot of money. So taxpayers, get out your wallets, you know what I mean? Here is the shack on the DB draw. This was a place that was like, because it didn't work anymore, the bridge didn't work anymore, you could only get out here either by boat or by walking all the way out. So I'd walk out here, and I'd usually get out here around sunset, and I'd just sit and watch the trains going on the Portal Bridge. I'd watch the tide changing in the Hackensack River. It was just one of the most beautiful spots in North Jersey that you could ever imagine. Yeah, here's the Portal Bridge. Here's the 5 stacks of the Kearney Generating Station back. I mean, it doesn't get any more iconically Jersey than that right there. I love it. So, because I couldn't cross the bridge, I couldn't keep going, what did I do? I walked back to my truck. I got in, and I went home, and I had a good night's sleep. I got up, had a good breakfast, and then I started my adventure the next day over here in Laurel Hill Park, which I will always call Snake Hill. And so here it is, Snake Hill, rising up out of the Meadowlands, this strange volcanic rock. Where did it come from? Who knows? Ace on the Don, still riding high up here, rest in peace. This is right before they put in the new flagpole. Very windy up there. There's this huge flagpole up there now. And this shot right here is looking back on where we just walked the other day. As you can see, they quarried out Snake Hill. This used to be much, much bigger, and they took as much as they could just so it didn't interfere with the highway beneath. And they had to leave that, otherwise the highway would have been disrupted. This is the bridge leading up to the Portal Bridge, and here's the Amtrak train going towards the Portal Bridge. But we're going to turn around and we're going to walk all the way out into Secaucus, into the no man's land of Secaucus out here. This was a really cool, very long spot from Secaucus into Jersey City. And at the end of track sign, that's where the abandoned tracks stopped and the live tracks began. When I first started walking here, there was a train parked here for many years. In fact, it was parked here for so long that the wheels were actually rusted to the tracks. So it was a very big surprise that when I came back here to fly my drone, that the train wasn't here. It was here on my first walk. Here's the train. I really wanted to do like a nice low drone flight over the train, but like I said, when I came back, it was gone. So that just told me, you know what, if I want to get out here and finish my book, if I want to get out here and finish my movie, I better get out here right now and do it. So it kind of lit a fire under me, and it drove me out towards the Bergen Arches and towards the Hudson River. Here's Penhorn Creek. It's very green, as you can see. Now, no river or stream should ever be that green. There may be a reason for it, and I think it could be because it's right underneath the Hudson Generating Station. Recently, they imploded the Hudson Generating Station, so it's really no more. And they forgot to tell people about it in Jersey City, and they did it at 6 in the morning, so they woke up a lot of scared people out of their beds. You know, they just were like so shocked by it. This is the Croxton Split. This is where the tracks split off, and if you follow it to the right, it goes through this incredible marsh, this beautiful marsh. Absolutely gorgeous. And you can see these are live tracks, they're very polished. The one thing though is the noise pollution here is unbelievable. Between all the freight lines, between the commuter lines, the highways, the planes flying over. I mean, it's just, it sounds like you're walking into an industrial hell. It's insane. So you can't really follow it to the Bergen Arches anymore. All the infrastructure's gone. I was gonna like cut through under those freight trains, but then all of a sudden I saw this railroad bull, you know, like a railroad cop, and I was like, ah! And I just got out of there, man. I took off. And I walked back through Secaucus, and this absolutely beautiful winter sunset. It was like one of the most gorgeous sunsets I've ever seen. This is the garbage burner in Newark right here. So if it can make the garbage burner look that beautiful, just, you know, what can you say about a sunset like that, you know? So the next day, I started out in St. Peter's Cemetery in Jersey City. This is the oldest cemetery in Jersey City, and I chose to start here because basically it's a bridge between the old Boonton Line tracks that I was walking, and the Bergen Arches. All the infrastructure that was Erie, that used to be here, is completely gone. So there's no way to actually follow the rails into the tunnels like they used to go. So I decided to do the next best thing and use this as my bridge. But when I first got to the cemetery, I was like, oh my God, this place is amazing. So I just had to spend like a couple hours walking around the cemetery, taking pictures of the gravestones, flying my drone really low, and like through the graves. It was just a lot of fun. And then when I finally got my fill, I used this cemetery to descend into the tunnels below Jersey City. So here we go, into the bowels of Jersey City. To the right, we have the Bergen Arches, known as the Erie Cut. To the left, we have the Dead Man's Tunnel, officially known as the Long Dock Tunnel. Now, this Dead Man's Tunnel is called that because 57 people died while building this tunnel. The worst accident they had, this arch right here that we're looking at, collapsed, and it landed on 11 people. 11 people died when that arch collapsed. Above those tunnels is the DL&W tunnel, and as you can see, they're very much still alive. That's a New Jersey Transit train coming from Hoboken. But we are much more interested in the abandoned, so we're going to head over here to the right, which is the Bergen Arches, the Erie Cut. Now, one of the cool things about exploring the Erie Cut is that I got to fly my drone underground, which was amazing. Usually you think about flying a drone really high in the air, but no, I got to fly my drone through the tunnels underneath the city, which is so cool. But one of the things I discovered while walking through this Erie Cut, with like a couple $1,000s worth of camera equipment, was that there's only one way in and there's one way out. And there's like people living down here, you know? So if anybody decides to assault you while you're down here, you're just gonna have to fight because there's nowhere to run, you know what I mean? Luckily, nothing like that happened to me, but there's a lot of proposals to make a greenway out of this, and security is something that they're gonna have to think about very seriously if they wanna go through with that down here in the Erie Cut. This next little shot, right, I found this phone. Somebody must have thrown it off one of the bridges. Of course, I had to bring it home. It's like hanging on my studio wall. It's kind of cool to have one of those old phones. This helmet that I'm wearing was a necessity because of the icicles that kept falling and the stones that keep falling, and also because it had a light on it. Now, when you're walking through these tunnels, you think, oh yeah, I can see the end, no problem. But when you get to the middle, it gets to be so dark, you can't even see your hand in front of your face. I mean, it's really dark in those tunnels, especially that long one. So the Dead Man's Tunnel and the Bergen Arches emerge from under Dickinson High School. And this area used to be entirely Erie. It used to be like the Erie tracks, the Erie layout where they used to keep their trains at night. None of that is in evidence at all. It's all completely gone. These are the viaducts that lead into the Holland Tunnel under here. That's all that you'll see. There's very little history left. What there is down here, though, is an incredible art gallery of aerosol art that is ever-changing, and some of the best talent in New Jersey and New York, frankly, is right there under those bridges. One thing that doesn't change is these tablets over the Long Dock Tunnel. It names all the bigwigs in the company, but it makes no mention of the 57 people that died building the Dead Man's Tunnel. So that's pretty typical. Nark and Fiber under the viaduct, two of my favorite writers in New Jersey. And let me tell you, it was very cool to get under these bridges because I used to drive under these bridges all the time, like to get into Hoboken, to get into the Holland Tunnel, to go to Jersey City, WFMU. I'd be sitting up, you know, in traffic on these bridges, and I'm wondering, what is underneath? What is underneath? Because I could see the graffiti coming up over the bridge deck. So when I emerged from the Bergen Arches and I saw this incredible, all this artwork, I was just so stoked to finally get there. It was like a bucket list thing for me. I included this shot right here. It's a little shaky, but this is the exact path that the viaducts used to take as they exited the Bergen Arches. And they would hook up with this bridge right here. This is the last vestige of the Erie that we're going to see. That's the bridge over Monmouth Street. From here on out, it's just going to be ghost rails that we're following because everything has been covered by the street or by these buildings. COVID is going on, that's why I'm wearing that mask. I get to Marin Boulevard and I hang a left to go check out this incredible mural on this side of this warehouse by the artist Distort. It depicts the Bergen Arches and Jersey City as a whole. It's just this massive, really awesome mural. It was such a great way to end my journey by checking it out. I always wanted to just kind of check it out instead of just drive by it, you know. So I stood there for a long time and just took pictures of that mural. Very cool. Then I was back on the path of the ghost rails, and here it is. If you look at those streets, they're very much the way the railroad used to go. This was basically a snaking pit of railroad tracks. You couldn't even tell where they went. They all went out towards the Hudson River, and that's where we're going to head right now. It used to be called Pavonia, now it's called Newport Park, and it's part of this Hudson River walkway. This is the pier that the trains used to go to, and the people would disembark, and they would get on a ferry, and they would take it over to Chamber Street in Manhattan, which is what we're seeing across the way here. So I got to this point in Jersey City, and I was like, all right, I made it, man, I made it. I did the whole old Boonton line. That's so cool. All I had to do was put my drone up and get a few shots. But then I met these guys, and they kind of screwed me up, because as soon as I put my drone up in the air, they either got curious or aggressive, I really couldn't tell which, but they started dive bombing my quadcopter, right? So I don't want to hurt a seagull, I don't want to lose my drone, so I made a very quick, evasive action, just dropped the drone out of the sky, basically, made a safe landing, and I took it home. And I'm telling my wife about my bird predicament, and she surprised me by chartering a helicopter flight so I could finish getting my pictures, getting my photos and my video for my book and my movie. So we took off at Kearney Point, right by the Passaic River, right by the Pulaski Skyway, which was, for me, absolutely amazing. We flew over the Hackensack River, saw the new Whit Penn Bridge project, that's what we're looking at right here. And then as we're following the Pulaski Skyway, I see the 5 stacks of the Kearney Gen coming into focus. And I'm like, oh yeah, snap this picture. It was amazing. It was like a moment for me, you know? Then I found myself over Manhattan, checking out New York City like I'd never seen it before, man. And then here, looking back past the World Trade Center, over New Jersey, the landscape that I had just traversed, and there's Pavonia right there, present-day Newport. And I was like, yes, I did it. Now, I froze my fingers off up there in the doors-off helicopter flight in the middle of winter, but let me tell you something, it was completely worth it just to get these shots and to have that experience. It was absolutely amazing. This next shot right here over the East River, I would say it's about as far as the old Boonton line took me on my journey. And I was able to use the photos, the video, and the experiences that I had to create my book, my movie, and now this live presentation, which I hope you guys have just enjoyed. So thank you for coming on this journey with me. All right. Thank you. And we are going to go right into a Q&A. So who's got a question? Yes?
So on this side, or the west side of Jersey City, at least the Greenway is going to go at least that far that you talked about. They've already started tripping it out. Are you consulting for them or anything? Like, what is the organization that's doing that? Because I had to do something similar when I was on the Environmental Commission in Cedar Grove, when with the old tracks that the Lenape Trail goes across, they had a couple bridges, like the scary ones that you had to walk over. We had to put a concrete deck down after they took off the ponds. But I just wondered what organization and who's going to own the Greenway? Because I think you said one from Norfolk Southern owns the right of way currently. Who's going to own it once it's a Greenway, and who's doing the planning?
Well, currently the state of New Jersey just bought it from Norfolk Southern for $65 million. So now New Jersey owns it. As far as what's going to happen and am I consulting and things like that, no, actually. I'm just I'm like a trespasser. I'm a guy who goes out and goes where he's not supposed to go and stuff. So people don't call me for consultations and stuff like that, you know what I mean? I have no idea. I have no idea what they're going to do, but I do know where the Greenway is going to go. So supposing they get it across the Hackensack River, instead of going out into the Croxton Split, it's going to go where the Hudson generating station used to be. It's going to go over there, and it's going to kind of come out into a place in Jersey City, which is really weird. It doesn't go all the way out where it should. It comes out into like no man's land, Jersey City. So it's kind of like a little bit poor planning, but I had nothing to do with it, so don't blame me. Josh.
Is the no man's land Jersey City where it lands because the old Boonton line is active rail still? Yeah,
they're all active, so basically they can only take it so far. There is a little bit of room on the side of the rails, and they could safely have people go that way. But if they ever wanted to have it hook up with the Bergen Arches, they would have to have some sort of like pedestrian thing over the line. They couldn't do a tunnel there because it's too wet.
Right.
You know what I mean? So basically, every time they want to, like, they come up with an obstacle, it's just more and more millions of dollars and millions 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 of dollars. Oh yeah, we'll just make this a kind of millions and millions and millions of dollars pathway when we have people starving on the streets, whatever. Yes?
Even if nothing happens, which most of us would hope, I think this film will be referred back to by historians 100 years down the line. My little concern, which I expressed at least one of the hearings that held at Brantford Park, was you showed the bridge, the beautiful bridge over Brantford Park. Just to the north of that is, a lot of people don't know, is Mill Street. Then ended at the trail, at the railroad crossing right there. It's grade level. Unfortunately, that's just been blocked off to extend Henderson Field golf course by one hole. And it's unfortunate. That spot could have been the premier entrance to the Greenway for Newark and Brantford Park, and for everyone, not just those of us who live in Newark. I think it's something that may not be reversible politics, but I think it should be considered. I have voiced my opinion about it at that hearing, and I'm hoping others will do so also.
I just want to say, I was down there actually the other day to check that bridge out, and I was climbing under the fence, and I gave a big middle finger to the golfers that were out on that hook. For you and me.
A lot of people don't realize that Mill Street, there's two sections of it, and there's the one on the north side of the river that ends. You used to be able to drive in there and turn around. Right.
Yeah, that used to be Branchburg Park, and now the golf course has completely taken it over. When I first saw that, I was devastated. But like I showed in the movie, what really sucks about that is that the deer are cut in half, and like they have nowhere to go except North Newark. That's no place for a deer, But thank you for your comments. I appreciate that. Yes.
Hey, thank you, Wheeler. Full disclosure, I'm a longtime member of Metro Trails, so we've hiked this thing quite a bit. Mike says his kid is a little too rambunctious, or he would be here. How west is this Greenway going to go? I mean, Greenway, I don't expect it to go all the way to Greenwood Lake or even Pumpton Junction, but how west are they planning to go?
It's, as far as I know, Montclair to Jersey City. So it's a little bit weird because now everyone asks me, like, why do you call it the old Boonton line? Because it's really the NYGL, the New York and Greenwood Lake line. And that used to go all the way from Jersey City out to New York, Greenwood Lake, whatever. But then when all that changed, it was basically the Montclair line. And so it would just go from Jersey City to Montclair. Then they made a whole other line, and then they abandoned this line. So basically what people in my town, I live in Montclair, people, when they're talking about these abandoned train tracks, they're always like, oh yeah, the old Boonton line, the old Boonton line. And they just started calling it the old Boonton line. So I know that technically it's the NYGL, but I had to call my book the old Boonton line because nobody would have known what the hell I was talking about if I called it the NYGL, you know what I mean? But if you are in Montclair and you say, oh yeah, I was on the old Boonton line, they know exactly what you're talking about.
Thank you. My second question, I've only been on the Meadowlands Park twice, and each time I'm thinking, the Meadowlands is going to swallow me whole, and no one will ever see me again. How tidal is it, and does that very thin stretch where the Newark branch comes in, how often does that get flooded?
Well, you might notice if you've been there, they have on one side of that going out, they have this iron fence. You know, and it's it's like this spiked, very heavy cast iron fence. And basically what that is for the tide. So they know that the tide, when it goes out and the wind's coming over the Meadowlands, is going to push stuff that way. That's why there's not a fence on that side too. The debris always comes from one side, so they put up that fence. And that's what it's there for, to stop the tide coming up. I've never seen it covered by water, but I would guess that during Hurricane Sandy, it was definitely underwater. So it takes something like that to put the water that high, but it can happen, that's for sure.
There's washouts all through that swamp area, right? And a lot of them look fresh, like when big storms, I think, water.
Under the Belleville Turnpike there's a lot of washouts especially. Yeah, and whenever the tide changes in that spot, it's just, if you like, there's a very low rail bridge right after Route 7, and sometimes when you're walking over that, and you hear the gurgling and the rushing underneath, you're like, oh dude, you better watch out. Yes?
Hi, I live in Branchbrook Park, but I go to St. Peter's University. So I have 3 questions. One, what is flooding? Because I'm fairly new to this. Second is, how do we know that the Greenway, it's nice in theory, but it's going to cost a lot of New Jersey taxpayer money, and it's also like an environmental disaster, because you mentioned the animals and the wildlife and even the trees and plants. So how do we make that known to our representatives? We don't really want this to happen. And also the third question is, what inspires you to make this documentary and movie, knowing that you're kind of risking your life as well as trespassing?
Good questions. Well, I would say, as far as trespassing and risking my life, that's just kind of what I like to do, you know? I love getting out into abandoned buildings. Abandoned stuff is my specialty for Weird New Jersey. That's what I do for them. Specifically, all the abandoned buildings along the Passaic River. So when I was hanging out on the Passaic River at Rouse Boatyard, I kept seeing this bridge. And my friend X-Ray and my friend Bill Rapp were telling me, oh yeah, that's the bridge that goes out to the Meadowlands. And I'm like, well, what's that way? And they're like, oh, Montclair. And I realized, oh, these are the same tracks I'm walking on in Montclair, are these same that are going over the Passaic River. So cool. So anyway, I tied all that together, and then when I found out that they were going to make a greenway, I was like, I wonder if that's the tracks I've been walking on, and sure enough, they were the same tracks. So I know from my past explorations, every building that I ever loved that was abandoned has been torn down. You know, I started out at the Essex Mountain Sanatorium, the tuberculosis hospital on the hill, and I moved down to Overbrook after they tore that down, and I spent decades down there. I documented it being torn down. So these tracks I've been walking on the whole time I lived in Montclair. I was like, you know what? They're going to just rip these up. They're going to ruin this. I better go take pictures of this right now. And so that's just what I did. I just from experience of losing the places that I loved, I figured I might as well get out and do it. And then, that was a very solitary affair. I'd go out, I'd go for walks by myself, and then I'd sit in my basement and turn it into a book and a movie by myself. So it's just really nice to get out here and share it with all you guys, and just to be able to, it's almost like, on The Simpsons when they want to show the slideshow and everyone's like, they don't want to watch it. But this is a slideshow that people actually want to see, So it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool to be able to show up the library and just have a bunch of people that are into it. So, what was your first question again?
What does it mean to level a place and regarding the environmental and wildlife disasters?
Right, the environmental stuff. So actually the biggest disaster I would say with paving this right of way would be flooding. Because we all know, anyone who studied like the Passaic River, that the more development that we have around here, the more roads that we make, the more rooftops, flat rooftops that we make, it collects rain on that whole, like the whole road will collect rain. They'll all go into the gutters, and those gutters will go right into the smaller tributaries which go into the Passaic River eventually. So the smaller tributaries start to flood from all the rain that's going into them, and then the river starts to flood, and then people's houses start to flood. You know, so if you're going to make a paved bike highway, basically, which is what they're, see, it already is a greenway, and they want to make it into a paved roadway, but they're going to sell it back to us as a greenway. You know, but really it's just going to be bicycles going. You know, there's no room for deer, there's no room for fox. There's no room for people like me, you know, who just want to like get out away from people, you know. So I would have loved to have seen this remain a true greenway, which is what it is right now. But I know from past experience that that's not going to happen, and it's going to get torn up, which it already has been, and it's going to get paved and all that stuff. So as far as what we can do about it, I really don't know, except keep talking. So yes.
A portion of the walkway that you did indicated that, quote, it was taken over by industry. Are they encroaching on the right-of-way?
I believe that they were paying Norfolk Southern to do that. I don't think it was an illegal move. I think that they were basically renting that from them. I'm not sure about that. That's conjecture. As far as what's going to happen now with it, I really don't know. You know, it's a good question though, and I definitely have my eye on it as to what's going to happen there. But I'm not sure. It'll be interesting to find out.
Yes, right. Wheeler, you're one of my favorite living geniuses that live nearby. It's an honor to be here to listen to you in this beautiful library. I'm going to say three things really quickly because I speak too much and I'm very excited about what you're doing. One is, did you know that the State Hill was the sanitarium, it was the asylum? You knew. The second is that forest in the water is part of the research that I'm doing about how it was 5,500 acres of forest in the Meadowlands were burned down because they were full of pirates. And it was too dangerous. They couldn't, you know, do the train lines and the roads. Everyone in stagecoaches was involved. Now, what I wanted to ask is a question. In the Greenway, all of those markers and those bridges that he made, and then the ornamental bridge like over Branchwood Park, you know, he was trying to show that cement could be pretty. He never succeeded with that. But are they going to restore? I mean, you should be the spokesperson.
I just tried to find that out, actually. I did a thing with the Star Ledger, Larry Higgs, and there was actually just an article about it, where basically I was like, listen, because Larry Higgs is the transportation reporter, I'm like, dude, if anyone could find out, you know, the answer to this question, what they're going to do with all these mile markers and stuff, it's you. And so they kind of gave us this like sort of generic answer, like, oh, we're going to try to save something. But that W post, that whistle post under Baldwin Avenue, is just laying on the ground. Like, it's just like, they just ripped it out. The one that's in the Arlington Station in Kearney is broken in half and just laying on the ground, clearly by a machine. So I don't think they're really going to do much to save anything. They're really just not even that interested in it. Yeah, it's tough. There was something else you were asking about I was going to say, but now I can't think of what it is.
The asylum, the woods.
Oh yeah, the asylum up there, okay, with all the dead bodies around Snake Hill. Yeah, like that's a Potter's Field. There was thousands and thousands and thousands of people in the Potter's Field from all the institutions up there. There was an almshouse, there was a sanatorium, and then so when they had to do the 15X exit over there, they exhumed corpse after corpse after corpse after corpse, and they moved it to a mass grave in Hackensack. As far as the forest goes, that is a very interesting story. I read about that in a book called A Great Conveniency by Kevin Olson. There was pirates hiding in the Meadowlands, and they lit the Meadowlands on fire to try to get these pirates out, and they apparently burned them alive, which is crazy. But as far as the Atlantic white cedar goes, we took that wood because it wouldn't rot. And we made shingles out of it, we made boats out of it, we made all sorts of stuff like siding out of it and everything. The reason why it never grew back is because the Oradell Dam, further upstream, they dammed up the Hackensack River where it's all freshwater. And not as much freshwater was getting down into the tidal portion, the lower portion of the Hack. And what happened was it was too concentrated with salt, and those trees could never grow back. But they're stumps because we cut them down in the first place. So it kind of reminds me of the Dr. Seuss book, the truffle trees, you know, the Lorax. It's really like the Lorax playing out in real life. Yes, back there.
Hi, Matt. Thank you. This is awesome. The St. Peter Cemetery, do you know what church means that or who means that? I drive past there every morning around my line and go to the city. So also super interesting. So that's the one question I have about who maintains that, if you know. And then the second one is when you parked over by the storage facility, could you get the trucks there, or did you have to like drive under like Tony Circle and get like somebody else? Like, did you have? Were you able to? I know that the cemetery is all fenced in. Like, did you go around the back?
Well, what I did was I hopped the fence into the cemetery and hung out there. That's the oldest cemetery in the Catholic Archdiocese of Newark. So the Catholic Archdiocese of Newark are the ones that take care of that cemetery. It's a very forgotten cemetery on the side of Tunnelly Ave. Yeah, they do maintain it well, yeah. So it's forgotten, but it's not forgotten, you know what I mean? I hopped the fence in there, and then I got my fill, basically, and then over where I parked, over by that storage facility, there's like a generator there, I guess if they lose power. I parked right in that spot, and then I went down. And there's like this embankment that goes under Tunnelly Avenue. It's really steep. It's just gravel. Like, it's a very sketchy place to climb down. And when I was climbing down there, I found the contents of somebody's entire life belongings. I guess they had been keeping it in a storage unit, because there's a storage unit right next to the cemetery. And I don't know if they didn't pay the rent at the storage unit or whatever, but somebody took all this person's stuff and just dumped it. I mean, we're talking clothes, CDs, movies, like just everything, books, everything that you own. Just, oh, it was so sad to see. Like pictures of the guy's kids and stuff. Oh my God. But anyway, I hopped down there onto the tracks and then went right in. And that's how I gained access. It's actually not the best way to gain access to the Bergen Arches, but I did it that way because I wanted to keep it as true as I could from Montclair to Jersey City. Normally, if I was going to go visit the Bergen Arches, I'd drive actually into Jersey City, go down 10th, and then there's like a little parking lot there, and you can just pop right in. That's how most people probably get in. But I wanted to keep it pure because I was going from here to there. You know, good question. Good question. Yes.
I'm wondering if there's a way to create an advocacy group for the work that you're doing as you go to the different libraries, to make sure that some of these voices and some of the images get preserved in the final greenway that's going to be built. Because a lot of times decisions are made by older people, you know, of a certain class and such, and the voices of diversity, inclusivity, and a little bit of wackiness along the trail are not often part of public meetings in general. And if there's a way to leverage this to allow there to be to retain that incredible graffiti along the trail and to allow for swales and for nature and wildlife, it hasn't really been talked about in the writing that I've read about how they're going to design that trail, and I'd be happy to work on that. I think there's a whole group out there that just don't know how to enter the public information and comment process.
Well, I think, you know, I wish you luck with that. For me, this is where this is the end of the line for me. I'm done. This is actually the grand finale of my little book tour, and I'm not going to do it anymore. You know, I've had people ask me to do more. I'm like, nah, I'm done. Yeah. You know, and I basically, a year ago in October on Halloween, my book came out, and I was like, I'm gonna go at it for a year. You know, and that's what I've been doing. And then, so now I'm working on a novel called The Cemetery Clown, and it's all about the funeral business in North Jersey, and it's kind of centered around this clown in the cemetery. So basically, I'm going to be writing my book, and I'm going to be making a movie out of it, and like that's my next project. So it was really awesome to do this, but I'm ready to move on, you know. And as far as like the Greenway goes, for me, the abandoned tracks were really that was what brought me there. And since they're gone, I'm gone, you know. That's how it goes. Yes, sir.
I love it. I mean, it's a tough balance, though. I mean, like I'd like to be there with you, going over the bridges, you know. Believe me, but I guess I don't know how everyone else can appreciate it. I mean, I grew up, my family had a demolition business, so no one was more involved in going in abandoned sites and abandoned buildings and sites and tunnels throughout North Jersey, and you know, they built a water park in the middle, and the water park is right there. It's called the Hackensack River, you know.
Oh, I know you're getting started on that.
Yeah.
No, I mean, you know, let me first say, like, obviously the Greenway is not the worst thing in the world. You know, there's a lot of things in the world that they could do that would be a lot worse than build a Greenway. I'm not completely opposed to like greenways and things like that. All right, fine, you know. The thing that really irks me about the Greenway is that they're calling a piece of pavement, a bike path, a Greenway. That just irks me. I don't know. That's just, I feel like I'm being lied to. And the other thing is like, yeah, okay, I mean, it's very cool if people want to go on their path and walk on this and everything. But you just, from my perspective, I had already been walking there for so long that I'm like, you know, I don't want to hear other people's opinions about it. I just was out there like looking at the birds. You know what I mean? I was out there watching the deer. And then everyone started saying, oh, we're going to do this. We're going to change it this way. We're going to make it like this. We have all these good ideas that I don't like, you know? So it's okay. I don't think it's the worst thing. I'm not even opposed to the Greenway. I think, fine, if they want to do it, go ahead. But for me, I'll be off on some other abandoned tracks somewhere else, you know what I mean? And I won't say where those are, because I'm going to keep it a secret for now. Tom?
Yes, well, it's different between active recreation and passive recreation. As it is now, it's just people who go out there and walk, you know, the roads to take their safety, but people want to be active. I think there's probably a feeling that if it's not used more actively, then eventually it's going to go.
Yeah, like in the section in Newark where it has been taken over. And so I think it's valid. I think there's valid points on why this should be a greenway, and I think there's ways to preserve things. You know, if people want to go that route, that's just not my route. My little job here is just to do my little thing and stay little. You know, I just want to stay small and do it my way and not have to worry about sponsors or things like that. I actually had people who wanted to sponsor this talk, and I was like, no, I don't want to be sponsored. You know? I would rather just make it very simple and very clean and very easy, and anybody can come and it's free. You know what I mean? So I can see my screen is starting to change colors. When it turns red, it means we're out of time. So I think we have time for maybe one more question. Anyone else back there have one? Yes, sir. You.
Just maybe like ignorance on my end, but for a while I always thought that this pathway like went through Nutley and Belleville, like the abandoned tracks. They're not abandoned, but I think like maybe like once every 2-3 months a train goes through there. Do they connect at all at any point?
They do. Yes, that's the Newark Bridge.
Okay.
So I have 2 books about trains. Actually, I have a lot more than 2 books, but these are my 2 train books. One is Walking the Old Boonton Line, and the other one is Walking the Newark Branch. So the Newark Branch peels off of the old Boonton Line in Kearney Marsh, like over by where we were looking at those trees that got chopped down. And that one that comes off, that's the Newark Branch. And then, yeah, it goes through like all these other towns. It goes through Newark, crosses the Passaic River, that NX bridge that's sticking up. That's the Newark Branch. It goes past like along Route 21, and then, yeah, it goes into like Belleville, Nutley, Clifton. And sometimes in Clifton, they still use the tracks. So you will see occasionally, you know, the signals will go down and a freight will come by.
Yeah, no, that's like when I was a kid, I grew up in Nutley, I was just like walking along that. So I always thought, like when I heard about the Greenway, I thought it was that for a while. But yeah, I'm just curious.
Yeah, you're lucky. You're lucky it's not. You know, because you get to keep your tracks. No, the Newark Branch was awesome, and that was a really awesome walk. In fact, I used the Newark Branch basically as a practice walk for this old Boonton line thing. I made my book and my movie, Walking the Newark Branch, first. I kind of learned how to do it, and then I went and did my real project, which is this one, Walking the Old Boonton line. So, yeah, check it out, man. There's a movie for free on YouTube, and this movie, not this exact version of it, but the actual movie is also available on YouTube for free as well. One more question. Who's got one?
Along the Passaic River in Newark, right by the Jackson Street Bridge, they built the riverfront park or whatever, and there's a dock there. But there's a fence and a padlock on it. I mean, so what?
Yeah, there's a dock, but there's no boat ramp. Like, how does that work?
I mean, you put a kayak in there. I mean, you put a dock there, but you're not having access to the river.
It's better than nothing. It's better than what was there before, you know, and which was just a bunch of like people living under the bridge and drinking all day. I kind of like the people under the bridge drinking all day. I would have probably preferred that, but whatever. All right, listen, thank you guys. Thanks everyone for having me.